Saturday, August 13th, we get to see Teofimo Lopez step back into the ring against Pedro Campa. Now, in the build up to this fight, when you watch everything, a lot of what you see, this is billed as the return. Teofimo Lopez returns to the ring. Teofimo Lopez is coming back. The takeover returns, all of these types of things. The word returned is used a lot. Kind of took it for granted, didn't really think about it. It is what it is. But as we got a little bit closer, I started to focus on it a little bit, and I thought, return, that's an interesting word. Has he really been gone? Has he been missed? Has he been missing in action for a long period of time that we're talking about this as a return? So I went back, took a quick look at his record. Fought one time in 2020, fought one time in 2021. Now we get to see him in 2022. Okay, 3 fights in 3 years. Nobody would necessarily call that active, particularly for a young fighter. But at the same time, I don't know if I would bill that as the return. Especially since 2020 is when COVID broke out and it was like all kinds of crazy stuff going on with the schedule, all kinds of guys we didn't see fight. Fights 4 times in 2019. Once in 2020, once in 2021, and now he's here in 2022. I don't really think from that perspective we can sit there and safely call this the return. But I get why the marketing team's doing it, and I get it why the PR team's doing it. Wherever it started, my guess is that it started with Teofimo Lopez's people. They're the ones who put it out there, right? Because there's a lot of storylines they want you to go with, not necessarily a return, but almost a new beginning. Think about it, comes back after the surgeries. New weight class. Loses the belts, wants to step up and do some new things. Perfect opportunity to kind of sever ties with 135 and everything that happened there. Coming back out, reinventing ourselves, brand new, new look, new this, new that, returning to action. 140 pounds. Perfect guy to return against as well. Pedro Campa. Now, I'll forgive you if you've never heard of him. Most boxing fans out there haven't, even people who are hardcore. Why? Because he's not anybody. Right? And I don't mean that to disrespect the man. This is a profession. He's a professional fighter. I'm sure that, he works hard. I'm sure that he's put in all the necessary effort. I'm sure that he's done a lot of things. Don't mean to dismiss him or the things that he's done or his accomplishments for 1 second. But we're talking about him stepping in the ring against Teofimo Lopez. Okay? Now, those of you who have watched the channel a little bit, I'm a fan of Teofimo. I think the man's incredibly talented. I think he's very physically gifted. I think he understands how to fight. I think his fight IQ is pretty good. I think he knows he knows how, but he's also still developing on how to marry his physical talent, his physical gifts with the fight IQ, with actual in-ring techniques. Right, and that's great. He's only 25 years old. We don't expect the man to be a finished product. We don't expect him to be super polished. He's not 34 years old. Or anything like that. He's only 25. And what he's done is already super impressive. Just look at his last 3 fights. Richard Comey, Vasily Lomachenko, George Kambosos Jr. Now look, Comey gets him out of there, easy work. Goes in there against Lomachenko, a guy who is considered like top of the top, one of the greatest amateurs of all times, comes into the pros and does incredible things. And Lopez goes out there and beats him decisively. Say whatever you want about that fight. Say that Lomachenko had a shoulder injury, or Lomachenko had a long time off and he's a slow starter, and Teofimo was huge for the weight class and he was being a weight bully in the way that he was doing things, and he just started fast, but he couldn't. Whatever you want. Lomachenko's skill level and what he's accomplished in this sport is at the very top. Lopez went out there and beat him that night. He beat him decisively. Man, that's it. End of story. Let's take that one step further. I think Teofimo Lopez is a much better fighter than George Kambosos Jr. I think that when their careers are all said and done, we're going to look at Teofimo Lopez as a guy who's a lot better. He will have accomplished much more. His name will ring out much more. He will have done a lot more in the sport, beat much more accomplished guys. But when they met, George Kambosos Jr. won that fight. Plain and simple. That's it. That's all there is to it. Man, Lopez couldn't handle it. His pops couldn't handle it. They came out with 1,000,001 excuses afterwards. But George Kambosos Jr. was the better fighter that night. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's how you show up and how you fight on that night. So now we see him step in here against Campa. And Campa is just not an accomplished guy. He's never fought anybody on this level. At least the last 3 guys, in my opinion, that Teofimo Lopez have fought are better than Campa. Maybe even maybe you would put Nakatani above him. Either way, Teofimo Lopez has fought much better guys. He's beaten much better guys. I think he's incredibly prepared to come into this fight. I bet you he's like super locked in and focused. So here's the thing about him. When you look at why he lost that fight with Kambosos, if I sit here and I tell you that I think he's a better fighter, I think he's a more skilled fighter, I think that at the end of their careers he's going to be more accomplished, beat better guys, all of those things, it would be logical for you to ask, well, then why did he lose that fight? Why did George beat him that night? I think it's about the mental health aspect. I think Teofimo Lopez has been pretty open. He's been pretty honest about things that he struggled with in the past. You've got things going on in all of his personal life. It's all the outside the ring stuff. It's all the stuff that just eats away at him, consumes him, just doesn't allow him to focus, gives him the anxiety, doesn't allow him to give 100% in training. He's not completely locked in on his opponent the way he needs to be. Whatever it is, right? I'm not there. I'm not talking to the guy. I don't know him. I don't analyze him. I'm not here to play amateur therapist, right? That's not what I'm doing. I'm talking about the things that we've seen, the things that he's talked about, the specials on ESPN. It's out there. So when we see a guy like Teofimo come out into that fight completely different, look like a fish out of water in some ways, and get beat by a guy who I think is not on his skill level, it's natural for us to go there. It's natural for us to think about that. When we see the way that he reacts after the fight, him and his father being emotional, talking about these conspiracy theories with, a top rank and the fight set up, and I should have stayed here, and whatever it may be, going to Australia was the problem. All of those things. They're reaching for all of it. It's all excuses, right? It's all because he's not willing or able to handle exactly what happened. But if he's able to put that in the past, if he's able to step past all those things, remember, he's only 25. If he's able to move past that and grow, the sky's the limit. He's at 140 pounds now. He's talking about Ryan Garcia, Gervonta Davis, Josh Taylor. Which, to be perfectly honest, I think is a little bit funny because if I remember correctly, Bob Arum wanted to have him fight Josh Taylor. Everybody knows that Teofimo Lopez has never been a huge draw. He's never been able to sell an incredible amount of pay-per-views. He's not going to go out there and sell a whole bunch of tickets. If you want this guy to make a lot of money, if you want to get him showcased, if you want people to see his skills because he is incredibly talented, one of the things a promoter will do is put him in a ring with a guy who already has a bunch of buzz. Think about when Floyd Mayweather fought Oscar De La Hoya. Think about when Manny Pacquiao fought Oscar De La Hoya. Think about the way that these fights worked out in the sense of Oscar De La Hoya, who was at the absolute pinnacle for popularity, for fan base, for people who tuned in to watch him. When a guy comes in and fights him and beats him, he's able to take a lot of that momentum. He's able to take a lot of that fan base, right? People start to know who his name is. It was after that Oscar De La Hoya fight that Manny Pacquiao just absolutely skyrocketed with his fame. It was after the De La Hoya fight that Mayweather skyrocketed with the fame. They're trying to build up Teofimo the same way, or at least they were. Josh Taylor is super popular over in Europe. They were going to match him up with him. For whatever reason, Teofimo was turning down the fight at that time. Things ended up how they ended up. He loses the belts. Here we are. Who knows what the future holds? But if Teofimo Lopez can put it all together, I think he is a force to be reckoned with. Now, I think this is the end of the road for him in the sense that I don't think he can move up to 147 pounds. Look, he was really big at 135. He was able to make the weight for a while. He's got a big frame. He's strong. He's super fast. He's got the quick twitch fibers. He was able to go in there and dominate. Said the last couple fights, the weight cut was extremely difficult. Couldn't do it. Took too much out of him. And he felt it on fight night. So he moves up to 140 pounds. Totally natural. But think about this. He's at 140 pounds now. He competes. He's already been talked about a little bit as being potentially a little bit undersized. Hey, there's a lot of guys at 140 pounds that are like 5'10", maybe even 5'11". Do you think you're going to be able to compete? You're going to have the shorter reach. You like to counterpunch. You're going to be able to go in there and set this up. Do you have to be the aggressor now, right? We've heard these little talks in the build-up to this fight. But think about this. What if he moved up to 147? Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford, Boots. 140 is the highest that Teofimo Lopez can go. In my opinion, with the way the current crop looks, and make no mistake about it, you got the young guys at 147 that are some killers, but 147 welterweight is a historic division. It's never easy. It's never easy. You can never look back at any time period at 147 pounds and say that division's nothing but full of bums, easy work, right? We can look back and we can see there's times when the heavyweight division was weak or strong. We can look back and we can see times when 130 pounds was stronger now. We can look back and see divisions that fluctuate. 147 is not one of those divisions. 147 is always a meat grinder. Doesn't always have guys like Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford at the top. Doesn't always have guys like Sugar Ray Leonard or Tommy Hearns at the top. There's times when the competition fluctuates, but it's always there. I don't think Teofimo is going to be able to make it at 147 pounds. I think the end of the road for him is 140, which is kind of ironic being as how he's only 25. Like, maybe he just dominates this division for a little bit, gets very big, very popular, and maybe he can pull off, cherry pick a few fights, get a few money fights with some guys that are a little bit bigger, but to like openly campaign at 147 pounds, I don't see it. So all that being said, we look at this fight here. He's coming in at a 25-1 favorite. Easy work, going to be a blowout, going to be an incredibly impressive performance. I expect a knockout. I'd be surprised if it took more than 6 rounds, 4 rounds, something like that. Right? I expect Lopez to come out, kind of feel his way a little bit, get comfortable, land some really quick, sharp counters. Campa's just not on his level physically, doesn't have the athletic gifts. He's not going to be able to compete with the speed, with the power, with the hand speed, the foot speed, any of those things. He's just not going to be able to do it. Once he starts to get caught by some of those big power shots that Lopez has, I imagine he'll be able to pack it away pretty quick. But Vegas expects that. 25-1 favorite. We all see this one coming, right? It's all about how he's going to look. It's all about what's next. Oscar De La Hoya is out there talking about how he's in the audience. He's scouting the fight for Ryan Garcia. This is the fight we really want. I've told everybody that this is the fight that needs to happen. Not going to happen. They're not throwing Ryan Garcia in there against Teofimo Lopez. That's not a fight that's going to get made. Oscar De La Hoya has his promoter's hat on. He's not really interested in making that fight. On another note, he's also not very interested in making the fight between Ryan Garcia and Gervonta Davis. I think Ryan Garcia loses both of those fights. I think he loses them both decisively. I think Oscar De La Hoya sees the same thing, and he doesn't want a guy who's generating a bunch of money for him at this age going in there and getting his head torn off by these other young guys. So it's not a fight that's going to happen. He's doing it all about the publicity. He's doing it all about selling the tickets and the intrigue, and maybe years down the road, that's a fight we get. But it's not a fight we're getting anytime soon. What happens after this one? That remains to be seen. 140 pounds is a little bit open in that regard. When you talk about a real big-name guy like Teofimo Lopez, or now Ryan Garcia, or who knows in the future about potentially Gervonta Davis moving up there. But these guys have these huge marquee brand name appeals. And 140 pounds are going to be able to go in there and they're going to be able to fight whoever they want to fight. Anybody's going to want to be able to get in the ring with them because of the money that they generate, because of the fan base, because of the way that they're going to be able to move the marker. Whether or not they win the fights, that remains to be seen. But I expect Teofimo Lopez to come out here and look incredibly good. Expect him to get an early stoppage. I expect him to sound confident. I expect him to sound renewed in his post-fight speech. I expect him to sound almost as though he's got a weight off his shoulders. I imagine it was a lot of pressure for that man after he beat Lomachenko and he was carrying around those belts. And that's all done with now. He had it. The spotlight was shining on him incredibly bright, and it moved on, and now he's able to come back. So I'm hoping that he comes in with this newfound peace of mind almost. Kind of a slightly new perspective. And that he can just focus on his craft, man, that we get to see the absolute best from. Because like I've said it before and I'll say it again, incredibly talented fighter. Incredibly talented fighter. And I think that if we get to see him reach his full potential, as fans, we'll be incredibly pleased. Let me know what you guys think.